the Ministry of Clarity interrupts these lies to offer what may be more truthful information. I'm Cass Andrew, and today's broadcast will be a little unusual, a little longer than we typically transmit, as we simply offer some clear, free-form thoughts on the ramifications of the recently concluded Operation Enduring Peace, and some thoughts on Super Earth Media's coverage of the event. To begin with a more glaring issue with the government's communications, the victory announcement to the Helldiver fleet reads thus: "The super colony has been destroyed. In its place, a beautiful black hole remains." We at the Ministry of Clarity question whether this is, in fact, a black hole. There are a few astronomers among our associates who tell us that the images provided by fleet journalists and telescopes are not consistent with the scientifically accepted concept of black holes. One of the more prominent independent astronomers, known among the underground by the alias Statera, had this to say: "Where is the accretion disk? Where's the photon ring? It's way too big for the mass of the planet. Sweet liberty, I think we made something we shouldn't have." Super Earth's Ministry of Truth has, despite its name, never been in the habit of admitting when it doesn't know something. That is on full display today as they dishonestly insist that the Meridia anomaly is a black hole, even though basic stellar cartography is required of every schoolchild of the Federation. And despite every reputable independent astronomer being stumped. So the question remains, what is this void staring at us from among the remains of Meridia's sun? We don't know. Earth scientists have never well understood Illuminate technology, and any insight into the Illuminate died with them after the First Galactic War. That's the crux of the problem. They're using technology they don't understand in ways they can't possibly control. We saw what happened with their own technology, the Termicide control system, and we all know how that turned out. Dark fluid probably means dark times. Moving on, though, it seems like Super Earth may have finally settled on a full explanation for the Terminids' inexplicable mode of interstellar travel. Read, "Interstellar spore levels have already sharply decreased in every system." So now there are spores traveling in space. Are we sure it's not just old E710 farms losing containment? Is Super Earth really ready to abandon that old narrative and acknowledge the Terminids as a spacefaring culture? Pay attention in the future, listeners. We would not be surprised if they change the story again in the future. We are also concerned about the supposed decommissioning of the Meridia station. Do we know if the dark fluid is being properly and safely disposed of? Or even that Super Earth understands how to dispose of or deactivate it at all? The military briefing suggests the dark fluid was depleted there, but to be frank, we don't believe those claims. Skeptical eyes on Meridia, but we should keep a weather eye on Meridia too. 12 researchers already died there. We're worried there may be worse to come on that world. And, of course, we would be remiss if we did not shed some clarity on the journalism of the shills over at Stroman News. Plenty of fodder there to pick apart, and here are some of our favorites.
Today, spontaneous military parades broke out across the galaxy,
Forgive the language, but that line is just stupid. Spontaneous military parades? That can't exist. Parades take planning, and military parades in particular involve a lot of intricate moving parts. Spontaneously suggests that a bunch of citizens were just so overcome with emotion that they grabbed a bunch of military weapons, which they're not allowed to have, and marched in arms down the street to the public square. If that actually happened spontaneously without Super Earth planning, do you know what Super Earth would call that? A riot, or an insurrection, a coup d'etat. An organized, armed force gathering without Super Earth approval would never be allowed. They'd send every destroyer in the fleet to glass that world. Folks, the parades were planned. End of story.
Concerns of unforeseeable impacts from the use of dark fluid have proved largely unfounded, experts say, with only minor space-time distortions.
That is a bold thing to claim. After just 2 weeks of quiet, when we don't even know what dark fluid is, Super Earth admits that they don't thoroughly understand the technology's properties. How could they possibly know that unforeseeable impacts could only happen in the first 2 weeks? They're unforeseeable. The Ministry of Clarity, for what it is worth, is wholly unconvinced of the safety of the Meridia anomaly. This stuff destroyed an entire star system. We suggest that a full solar year be observed before we even begin to entertain the idea of the anomaly as benign.
And efforts are now underway to develop a new and improved termicide formula. Looking at
One more reminder before we conclude today's broadcast that Super Earth prefers not to learn from its mistakes, because that would be an implicit concession that it's not perfect. The original TCS failure allegedly came about because of an unforeseeable instance of a phenomenon called hormesis. Of course, the scientists have been held criminally liable for the unforeseeable, but hormesis is just a plausible technobabble scapegoat, which really doesn't stand up well to scrutiny. The real cause of the TCS failure was obviously a case of classic Darwinistic selection. The resistant individuals survived or even thrived on the termicide and passed on those traits to their offspring. An ancient scientific principle, and by the way, totally predictable. And now Super Earth, having short-sightedly murdered the scientific minds who actually understood the first iteration, are tooling around with a provably faulty concept with no real solution. There will always be a sliver of the bug population to survive and reproduce amidst the TCS, no matter what arbitrary label you put on it. Mark our words, the Termicide Control System 2.0 will fail. But I'm afraid we've taken up too much of your time today, citizens, and if we transmit too long, they'll trace us to our broadcast location and come for us. Thank you for your time. Think about the truth. With our help, clear your vision. We're the Ministry of Clarity, and we'll message you again.